So, well, good morning, good afternoon, depending where you are. About my presentation, 3D models as tools for the people. What is this presentation about? As probably the title doesn't give much away. Well, this presentation is based on the project I did for my master thesis. The project was in 2019. I think this is important because now with all the COVID lockdowns and so we've been, uh, online archaeology and online museums are more common, but it wasn't that common 2 years ago. The project is based in the communication with different groups of stakeholders. And for this communication, I wanted to show a 3D model of a reconstruction of an Iron Age hill fort in Spain and see what I could learn from there, like what people think about it. Okay. First, about the hill fort, some archaeological framework, so you can get to know why. The site I chose was the Castro of Coaña. In the Coaña hill fort is in the northwestern of Spain, in Asturias. It's on a hill in the valley of the Navia River, and it's next to a stream of water. This is really common for this kind of sites. Then the hill fort is part of the Castro culture, that is the Iron Age culture of the northwestern of the peninsula. But the first settlement was found to be in the Bronze Age. It was on top of the hill, on the highest part, and it was made of wood huts. Then the Iron Age was the maximum expansion of the hill fort. And after that, in the first century, the change of the era, the Romanization arrived to the area. And the hill fort started a Romanization process with changing modifying the hill fort plan and shapes of the huts. And then in the second century, after the change of the era, like the hill fort was totally abandoned, like the rest of the hill forts of all this area. Yeah, so the hill fort is organized mainly in two areas. The Acropolis, that is the highest part, is where the huts from the Bronze Age were found, and the north neighborhood, where is the neighborhood or the area that has been totally excavated, and is what the project was focused on. Also, the last excavations have shown that there may be other neighborhoods in other sides of the hill, but they are not excavated, so I didn't want to do um, anything not based on archaeological facts. So there's special constructions that are also characterized of the Castro culture. The first one is the defensive elements that are basically walls and pits. Every hill fort has several of them, and many times are not only for defenses, but also for like a stylistic or just like to show off, symbolic. Also the saunas that are, I took them off of the project because they are really controversial. The researchers don't know when they want made. They don't know how they would look like, what was the use for these buildings, and also, but we know it was they were special because the stone they're made of is actually farther than the area. It's farther away in the area. Like these stones are carried for like 8 or 6 kilometers at least. So these were special buildings, but we don't know anything else. So I prefer to leave them out of the reconstruction. Another of the special buildings is the communal hut, that is the longest and the biggest in the hill fort. We know it was not a house because it doesn't have a fire pit, so it's not possible to cook or anything here. And in this settlement, everything was done inside the house or outside of the house. But in this one, wouldn't be possible. And then another special constructions are the huts with decks that protect the doors from the elements, and also the benches that are constructed against the wall, and they appear mainly in all the houses. Even nowadays, only some of their are conserved, and they appear also in all the walls of the communal hut. That is also another proof that this hut wasn't a house. Also, these benches are showing Strabo in the geographic of Strabo when talking about these peoples. Now, this hill fort was also interesting to work with because it was the hill fort that has been more investigated in Asturias. The first mention to it was in 1818, and the first excavation happened in 1878. That is quite early for the area. Between 1939 and 1942, there was like a systematic excavations that were accompanied by several articles about the materials and the Hilfort plan and everything. Then between the 50s and the 80s, there was more excavations. The last ones resulting in a chronology of the Hilfort made through the materials they could find. All of these excavations were done by different archaeologists. Then in the 80s, between the 1985 and 1991, there was a really important one because they finished to excavate all the huts of the north neighborhood. As well, they took some samples to investigate what kind of plants and animals were living around in the area. And as well, they started a process of consolidation. That is the moss that you can see on top of the huts in the pictures. That moss is actually a consolidation technique to keep the walls from falling. It keeps them together like concrete, but more natural. And then the last excavations between 2008 and 2009 were based on the saunas, excavate and consolidate them, and also in some samples from other areas of the Hilfort, like I told you before, that could result in the finding of new neighborhoods of this Hilfort. Now, but the model that is what I used for the creation for the project itself, there were several reasons to choose Coaña. As I told you, like it has been excavated for a long time, that gave a lot of archaeological evidence, and it make it the reconstruction as credible as possible and as real as possible. Also, there were like the blank spaces could be filled with ethnographical or archaeology or another archaeological evidence, archaeological from other Hilforts in the area that show similar characteristics and could give more proofs. There's also a didactic room in Coaña, and they also offer guided visits. This attracts a lot of visits, and it was really important for the project. As well, it's taking care of every periodically. So this was really good for the period because other Hilforts in the area are not that good taken care of. And lastly, the local community was a rural community, so it's smaller than a city community, and this was good in the way that it was easier to approach them, and it has the bad part that it's not as many people as possible to contact with. Then of course, there was other reconstructions in all this time, mainly this one from Garcia, from one of the archaeologists of the 40s. He made this reconstruction with everything he could find in the Hilfort, but actually we know now that many of these huts weren't living in the same space at the same time. Also, he created a tower where actually was a square, just the Roman square. So this reconstruction that you can see is not real or wouldn't represent a real Hilfort, but for some reason is the representation that has been shown still nowadays, even we know it's not real. And many people has this in mind. So sometimes when I show the model, many people ask me for elements that were in this reconstruction, but actually weren't in this reconstruction weren't in the Hilfort. Then there's other archaeological reconstructions, but they are not archaeological reconstructions, sorry, some 3D reconstructions, but they didn't follow any archaeological investigation. So it's basically what you can find in the Hilfort and then just covered. So the model, again, I base it on the latest archaeological research to show a possible version of the Iron Age Coaña Hilfort. And for the blank spaces, I used the ethnography mainly for the roofs. I selected the buildings that were part of the Iron Age Hilfort, and then I erased or modified the ones that were Romanized or were totally Romans. Some technical details really quick. I use a topographical map of the north neighborhood that I modified to show just the buildings that I wanted, and the software Blender with the version 2.79, in case someone is interested. Now you will see some videos as long as I'm talking. This is just to exemplify. This was also part of the project. I wanted it to be as open as possible, even from the beginning of the project. That was like the creation of the model. For this, I made these videos and I uploaded to YouTube to a channel for the project. And in this one, you can see how I made the floor lines, the floor plans for the huts. Basically, I follow the measures of the topographical map to keep everything in the same side, and that's it. Then I raise the walls. We have some walls that keep the same height. Some huts have still the same heights for the walls. So I basically just use those heights between 4 and 3 meters that we can still have. Then the roofs were following ethnographical evidence, basically vegetation roofs with 1 or 2 poles, depending on the length of the huts. Finally, I add colors. Sadly, I couldn't add textures in the time frame that I had, so I managed to color it. I would have liked to add texture, but it wasn't possible. Still, I managed to do like some gray, whitish for the stone and some brown for the vegetation of the roofs. Then the communication with the people was another important part of the project. I use social media, as I told you, I use the YouTube to upload the videos of the process. I also had an Instagram and a Facebook page to communicate with people. And as well, I use the Sketchfab, that is a 3D repository where you can find many models. I also use these QR codes to make it easier for everyone to jump from one social media to another. I made 2 surveys on site and online, and to 3 groups of stakeholders: the local community, that were only 22 interviews, visitors that were 43, and online visitors that went 42. To the local community, they show that it was the hardest to contact with. I didn't matter if they did the service on site or online. They told me that they visited the Hillfort, but normally they wouldn't visit archaeological sites. So this showed that they only visited Hillfort because it was close or it was part of the school program. But for them, the site is important. So they would like to invest more. They would like money to be invested in not only this Hillfort, but also Hillforts in the area. They told me that they understood the Hillfort better after seeing the reconstruction, but they thought that the model was useful, and that they would like to see the model on the site and also other models for other Hillforts of the area. Then the visitors, the interviews were done on the site, on the didactic room. They were mostly Spanish. It was the first time that they visit Coaña, but actually they used to visit more archaeological sites. So it's people that is interested in archaeological visits. They didn't understood the site, I found out, except that they did a guided visit or they saw the model. So they're lacking some information there. So they found the models were useful. They would like to see the models more available, and not only in this Hillfort, but also in other archaeological visits they will make. And finally, the online visitors, most of them were out of Spain. That show again the importance of the social media. So most of them haven't visited the site in real life, and they would like to see it after seeing the model. They are all interested in archaeology or history, and they told me that they normally actually access online material. Again, this was before COVID, that it wasn't that common to access this kind of materials. They thought the models were useful, and that the models, they would see the model on the site. And also another of the things that come out with these people is that they would like to find models or this kind of like online materials more commonly, because it's a bit hard for maybe non-professional people to find this kind of models. Like the Sketchfab repository is not that common to know of it. So now the last conclusions. Positive conclusions, that there's the importance of social media. This is positive and negative. Positive because everyone can have social media, and negative because it makes another work on any project to be in social media. So you need to be really present for people to actually get to know you. But yeah, the people like the 3D. They actually thought it was pretty useful, and they would like to see not only this reconstruction, but like reconstruction of the Roman area of the Hillfort and also like other Hillforts. It helped them understand the site better, and they will visit again. I'll go visit now with the information of the model. And as negative, again, the social media. Also, it was hard to get the local community help at some point, like communication with them. Some people think that some information was missing. This is easily fixable, of course. And some weren't really sure if they would invest money in this instead of the conservation of the Hillfort. That it's also proof that how we need to show people that actually the 3D models are useful and it's not as expensive to make them if you have people already trained for doing this. And this has been all. Thank you.